Hi, everybody. Bob Owens at the Bismarck High School, and we're talking wrestling tonight. We're going to be talking to the coaches from junior high and junior varsity level, and in this part two of the program, we'll be covering those state participants with Coach Schumacher and Coach Mark. Let's take a little bit of time and go around the table and introduce everybody. We'll start with you, Mike.
Yeah. I'm Mike Kraus. I'm the head wrestling coach at Wachter Middle School.
Dallas Hyde, I'm the JV coach at Bismarck High.
Scott Owens, JV coach, Bismarck High.
Purpose of our getting together is to highlight those wrestlers that have put in their dues this year, and a year of the virus, a little bit different. No east-west confrontations, no tournament wrestling. So we're involved in something a little bit different. And guys, what kind of a year was it for you?
Atypical, to say the least. I know at the middle school level, we weren't allowed to have all the kids in the room at the same time. And at the beginning of the year, we had close to 45 kids come out. And so we had to wrestle in shifts. We had to put some kids down in the weight room and have them lift and run while others were wrestling, and then swap and take turns. So definitely not your typical year.
And a new wrestling room for the junior varsity and the varsity wrestlers, but you had some exceptions over there too, didn't you, coaches?
Yeah, we absolutely had a full room. Every circle's full, and we were blessed with that. But at the same time, we had to make sure that we took precautions to make sure that the safety and the season to preserve that, to make sure that if we ever were to come down with something, we could make sure that we could wrestle on. And I think that was a really big overseeing by Coach Lardy and Coach Schumacher to make sure that we did everything we could at the start of the season to make sure that we could finish the season.
It's been an excellent year, but let's start out with that junior high, Mike, and let's highlight some of those 7th and 8th grade wrestlers.
Yeah, so the first two that I'd like to talk about is Paige Baumgartner and Cambry Feist. Those are our two young ladies that are wrestling with us this year, and they also are going to get an opportunity to wrestle in a state tournament, a girls' state tournament. And we are very excited for both of them. Both of them, individually, huge strides. They're both 7th graders. Neither of them have been wrestling their entire lives. They're both somewhat new to the sport, and they've made enormous strides. And what makes that happen is how coachable they are. When you talk to them, they're making great eye contact. They're listening. Yes, sir. They're doing everything that you ask them to do, and their aggression has gotten so much better. There was a time where it was almost, they were almost afraid to grab somebody's leg, but now it's like a fish in water now.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think having those two girls step out in the mat, I was kind of pleasantly surprised. I wasn't aware that, for instance, we had both Paige and Cambry wrestle a lot of exhibition matches, but I was just getting them any kind of match, and there was a time where I thought Cambry was a little bit bigger than she was, and I was putting her out there with kids that were a little, maybe too big to be wrestling her, and she went on after him, and she pinned one. And so she had that opportunity to walk off the mat on the varsity side after she finished her junior high season with a win where maybe that girl's a little too big, but because of her practice and her dedication, she came out on top that day, and that was a real it was a positive thing I saw in her face, but I also saw it in Paige's face too as her training partner. They're both excited. So, and the same thing goes with Paige. She goes out there and she wrestles extremely hard. Like Mike said, that they're at this moment in time where they're trying to decide if they're going to be aggressive or if they're going to be roll over, and that's really not an option in our room. And with their training partners or some of our lighter weight guys in 7th and 8th grade, they don't hold back on the ladies either, so they are every day is a tough go. So that's the sky's the limit for them. And this not this Saturday, but next Saturday they get a chance to compete in that unsanctioned, probably the last time we'll ever say that, unsanctioned girls wrestling tournament. They're going to group weight classes, so I can't actually say what weight class they're going to wrestle in. Once everybody weighs in, they'll find partners for them to wrestle, and our presence will be felt, I know. So that'll be really nice to see those two girls get a chance to showcase their stuff. So,
Yeah, awesome. Other 7th graders we got Braden Halverson. I'm going to actually talk about Braden Halverson and Colton Ireland and Little Newsma. All three of those guys, they're real little. They're still growing into the weight class, and the growing into the smallest weight class. But they got time to do it, and the time that they've been putting into the varsity room, and I'm actually going to say this about all of our middle school guys. None of them have to come up. None of them are there because they're being forced to. They all have made the decision to come up and improve. And the way I describe it to the guys before they have made their decision to come up is I say, this is a chance to learn from some of the best wrestlers and some of the best wrestling coaches in the entire region. Throw North Dakota out. I would take what we got in the Bismarck High room over just about any other room I've ever seen. And it's such an unbelievably awesome opportunity for these guys to come in and get better and learn from the people that know how to do it right. Other seventh graders that we got Jonas Kraus, my son, and Tiernan Glass. And what makes those two guys a little bit different is they're big guys. They're already in a weight class. The trouble with being 160 pounds or 150 pounds when you're a seventh grader is a lot of times that means you're wrestling juniors and sometimes seniors. My advice for those guys is keep doing what you're doing. And I hope Tiernan and Jonas, I hope you guys are listening to this. You guys got to keep doing what you're doing because your time is going to come. We'll probably step into this a little bit more, but as you guys get older and as you develop and you can actually fill that weight class out a little bit better, you're going to see the success.
Those two guys are going to benefit from puberty. Big time.
Yeah. And it's coming. I mean, they're training hard. They're here tonight wrestling. They just didn't come up just for the little bit. They're here for the whole thing. And so, being in our room, hearing the coaches speak about the importance of every single thing that goes on. If you hear that as a seventh grader and you get all those repetitions per year, I mean, you just become just that much better of a wrestler, but then you're also a better teammate. So to help make sure that gets through the hallways and whatnot, and you can pull those guys in that are thinking about wrestling. They're going to say, "Well, you got to see this kind of action." So I definitely agree. All those seventh and eighth graders that came up, they didn't have they could have said no. They didn't have this abbreviated season where they were unable to come up. They had the opportunity. They all came. They all found a way. So thank you, parents, to get to the high school every single day. And they wrestled hard in that meantime. And so as they wrap up, we have a few more other kiddos that we talk about, some of those eighth graders that are going to play a role real quick here on our team. And if you, Mike, you want to kind of showcase some of those because they're in your school.
Now, did I mention some of those names? And I don't think I talked about them really. So I'm going to step back here again. Braden Halverson, Colton Ireland, and Little Nusma.
Cade, yep.
Cade. All three of those guys, I almost kind of clump them together because they're all right around that same size. All three of them have amazing hips. They're able to get their hips off the mat in a hurry. Braden Halverson especially can scramble like nobody I've seen.
Yep. It's in the family.
They all got it in their head. They all got great wrestling minds. What I would like to see out of all three of them, though, is just more consistency. I'd like to see them, when they're taking their shots, keeping their chin up, driving through it, doing some of the things that we talk about in the room, but, just maturing, I guess, mentally, you could say, too, not just physically.
Absolutely agree. And like I said, even on the defensive side of things, Cade Newsom told me that he hadn't been taken down the whole season. So I think when kids are dedicated to that and that kind of thought process going through their head, and they're willing to protect that kind of goal in their mind of not being taken down, but at the same rate, they're going to set higher goals and they're going to push themselves to. And I mean, like you said, they got time to mature. We need guys at 106, 113. So it's always nice to have the starter and a lot of training partners because you never know who's going to go in and somebody gets nicked up. So you're right. Some of these kids have had a lot of experience. Like Cade's wrestled for years, and then there's some kiddos like Colton Ireland where he's coming into this and he's giving everything he's got, and he needs wrestling because I tell you what, when he's wrestling out there, you could see he's just got a smile on his face the whole time. And when you ask him how he's doing, he's like, good, and he'll come out with excitement even in his stories how he's wrestling. So
there's no quitting that little guy.
Yeah, so I think that Braden just goes right along with that. He's a great partner to these guys. They'll all strap up and wrestle our varsity guys at 106. They're ready to be their partners. They'll be the guys, the fresh guy in on them, let's say. And I think that's only going to make everybody better when you have a group of guys that are willing to sacrifice for the better of the team. And I think that goes on to say some of our 8th graders. I mean, we go from Logan Mertens, who is the kind of kid that's got the length with his arms, and he can reach around and he can throw on a headlock or a cradle without even being able to see what he's doing. So that's really impressive. And I don't know if you saw that in the junior high side, but we definitely did.
Yeah, he's got those long limbs. I swear he can scratch his kneecaps without bending over. He's got those long arms. But with Logan, and the same with our other 8th graders, Carson Lardy, Connor Harvison, it was really nice to have a good group of leaders in that 8th grade room. And what made it even better is seeing them around the varsity when they came up after the middle school season. So they were able to lead the crew at middle school, and then they were able to go up and still learn from some of these varsity guys and some of these other upperclassmen. A guy like Carson Lardy, his work ethic and his technique was never in question. Carson comes in, and everything you ask him to do and every move that you show, he knows how to do it. He's very comfortable doing it. What I would like to see more out of Carson is just maybe some of that confidence.
Yep.
A lot of kids, you can almost tell after the first few seconds of a match if they think they can win.
Yep.
Because a lot of times if the kid thinks he can win, they do.
Yep.
and Carson and Mertens, those two guys, once they get a little more confidence, I think you're going to see them really making a splash.
And not be afraid. Not be afraid to go out there and use the tools that you have and
Exactly.
be confident using them. Open up. Yep.
And then another 8th grader that, I mean, if you got money to put down, if you can buy stock in a young wrestler and see the dividends grow, keep an eye out for Connor Harvison. He is somebody that also has a great work ethic. When you talk to this young man, it's eye contact, it's yes sir, it's no sir, and if you tell him to step with his left foot, well darn it, he's going to step with his left foot. Not only does he has that coachability aspect, he has a great attitude, and he is aggressive.
Yep.
I think he's close to the total package when it comes to middle school wrestling. This kid is nasty on the mat.
And it's nice to have those guys in the room right now, because every one of those guys that we talked about were downstairs and they were wrestling somebody, and if not wrestling each other. So, I mean, when we look at the fact that we brought up that crew of junior high kids, and some will stay and become freshmen next year, and they'll continue it on, and we'll just reload down at Wachter.
Yep.
I think that's really going to be the impressive
I
side
don't
of
think we mentioned my big guy Sam Larson either. So and Sam's kind of had to talk him into coming to this high school, up to the high school after the middle school season was done, and he's just done a great job of just battling every day and getting better every day. We work on different stuff every single day, and he's sucking it up. He's absorbing it, and he's one of them kids too. Once puberty hits too, it'll be just amazing difference. So it'll be fun to watch the transition for the next couple of years.
Those junior high kids are really fearless too. You'd send them out, doesn't matter who they're wrestling, they go out and put out 100%, and everything's a learning experience for them.
Yeah, and we spent a lot of time this year, obviously due to the fact that we had no tournaments. We did a lot of exhibition matches, and there was times where we had 30-some matches, and that was just to try to get that feeling of, you don't have a tournament, but you can get a couple of matches in, and it's not your partner in the wrestling room's job to get you tired. You can get tired by wrestling somebody new out there. So we got those opportunities for them, and I think that they had their own season on top of this. It's a lot of bonus for them, and I do think that if we continue to be able to, obviously we'll get some tournaments back hopefully next year, and then we continue to make sure that we continue to give those extra exhibition matches, those extra reps on the street, on those mats against other teams. We're going to be pretty stout. So I just think that that's our junior high world, and then we start talking about our high school kids. Aiden Schlopman, first guy out there, he's wrestling any weight class he can get his body into, weighs 180 pounds, but he'll wrestle heavyweight if he got opportunity. Sometimes I have to tell him that's not going to work.
Yep.
So he's the kind of guy that's doing all the right things. He's just a few years into the sport, but he's definitely going to make improvements, leaps and bounds when you put that much effort
Wants
and
to
time.
get better.
Yeah.
What he lacks in technique, and technique will come, but what he lacks in technique, he more than makes up for in enthusiasm
Yep.
and intensity.
Yep.
I think he would also agree that that's one of his best attributes. He maybe doesn't know what he's going to do when he gets out there, but
Right.
darn it, he's going to do it hard.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's all we can ask of him, and so he's doing it. Another kiddo is obviously Bridger Owens. He's out there. He's one of those kind of guys. He's stuck in the middle too. He's a 152, 145. Where does he lie? He's one of those. He's growing. He's definitely stretched out quite a bit, and his talent on the mat is endless. He's just one of those opportunities is going to knock, and he's going to take advantage of that. So I don't know if you guys have any input about him. Make it positive. You know?
Make it positive. Okay. Always. Yes. Just I think once he finds his confidence level on the mat, and he works hard, and that's all we've ever asked him to do is to work hard and get better. And when you work hard, you will get better. So.
One of my favorite parts of Bridger is it seems like after every single match that you watch him wrestle, he gets a little bit better. You can actually see the improvement. You can point it out. Some of the mistakes that he was making earlier this year, he's not making those same mistakes. And some of those things that he wasn't quite getting to early in the year, he's getting. That sweep single that he has is a real weapon. I mean,
Yeah, he's bought in on it.
I think he can score on just about anybody in that division on that. And it's not because it's in his blood, although he might have some wrestling in his blood. That came from effort. And so hats off to Bridger. He's earning everything good that's coming to him, he's earned.
And I think a couple other guys that are very much that same thing is James Nagle. He's the kind of guy that doesn't say a whole lot, but he's there every day doing what's asked of him, and he's putting in the effort and time. He's one of those kids that he's growing throughout the season. I mean, he started at 32, then 38, and now 45. You're going to see him kind of becoming a man rated within the room his freshman year, and we don't want him to back down from that. Just keep growing, get tougher, and keep getting stronger, just like his big brother. I think that he's just finding his spot, and that's going to be a really positive for him and for our team as well. And I think another guy that goes right with that is Jaron Mcnichols, new to our team this year, but he's one of those guys that came in with maybe some toolage in his tool belt, but he's sure smoothed it out, and he's pretty confident when he steps on the mat, and that's all we ask. You put the time in for 5 days, and when it's time to duel, and put it down on the mat against another team, he did it, and even when it wasn't the outcome that we wanted, he threw everything at the guy, so that's all we want, and I think that's nice to see with a newcomer in our room. Next guy, Lana Mcmahon. He's the kind of guy that's just got a few years on the mat, but he is definitely wrestling hard, and he's going to find that spot eventually. And that's one of those things when you have so many good guys, you run out of spots right away. And he's 4 years of wrestling, and he looks like he's been doing it his whole life. And I think that's a real strength of his, is that he can hang with the big guys in our room, our 38-pounders, and he'll go down and he'll get technical with our 20-pounders. So that's nice to see. And another guy that's like that, Dylan Kostelecki, tall, lanky guy, but strong, and he can hang on into a tough match. And he had one just a week ago against Watford City, and he showed us all that extra time and effort paid off. And just constantly throughout this season, he's been asked to go up and be a presence for a heavier weight guy, because he's strong on top and he can ride and he can do things. But then he'll come down and wrestle with another light guy in our room, and he'll have to really put his self out there, and he's done those things. So being just a little guy last year to being a 120-pounder, it's really impressive to see him grow. It's not a day that he doesn't do what he's been asked to as well. So, I mean, there's a couple more guys that are out there. Tyrus, new to our team, but one of those things where once we find a spot for him, he'll stay. And I know that he's jumping between 38, 45. Where does he fit into our team? And when we get him into his spot, I think he's one of those guys that will wrestle with anybody. When the time to put your toe on the line, he'll go and do it. Just got to constantly work on just maturity out there, and make sure that we find a way and approach for him to be successful on the mat. I guess another guy, Devin Halverson, we talked about his little brother. Both those guys got that great hips, but we've talked about Devin before. He's dangerous from every position. He could be almost to his back, and he'll put the other guy to his back, and that's a great tool to have, but we're teaching him some other things to do just to be consistent. And I think that when I don't think is when you start doing those kind of things, you find success. So I guess our last guy that in our freshman lineup is Ben Sharpus, and Ben's one of those kind of guys where we dug him out and found him. I think, well, I shouldn't say we, the junior high coaches got him out last year, and then this year, with help with Coach Lardy, they got him out in the room, and he's one of those guys that he's learning what wrestling's all about, but ultimately he's also learning that our wrestling team is what he should encompass himself into. I think having our wrestling team wrap around him and give him an opportunity to find success, not only classroom, obviously we're looking for, but out on the mat with a group of guys that care about him, and I think that's going to be something that will be the next 4 years will be his thing. So I don't know that these guys have talked about him before, but he's one of those cats that he's no slouch on the mat. He's pretty strong.
My favorite part about Ben is he's not going to beat you with technique, not yet. And a lot of times you have to drag some of that aggression and some of that intensity out of kids. Not Ben. No. Ben brings it every single time. Yeah. And that's how you get better. I'll tell our kids, if you go slow and you practice slow, you're just practicing at being good at going slow. If you go fast, you get good at going fast. Yep. Ben is always coming with full intensity. Yeah, and if you don't believe us, ask his wrestling partners.
And that's quite a group to build on.
Yeah.
10 freshmen in that group, so shall we say the health of the program is looking very well in that lower side. Let's move to those sophomores.
Yeah, we got we got a bunch of guys here, not a bunch of guys, a couple guys here that are right on the bubble. You know, we got Ty Sanders that's done some varsity time and some JV time, and just needs to figure out where he lies in this whole lineup and gets to the right weight, and he could be a force to be reckoned with. Matt Steckler, Matt's grown a lot this year. Definitely can see it in his drilling. His he's in it. We just gotta start having some success. We gotta quit doing the stuff that puts us in bad positions where we can't be successful. And then Tony Langma, he is our wild card. He's when he's in the room and he wants to be there 100% committed, he's fun to watch. And I guess the only thing I'm looking from these guys is just a little more commitment. More commitment out of these guys would be great. When you get in that room, it's go time. It's not let's talk a little bit. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's just get in there and go to work, and the work will pay off. So, that's where I'm at with our sophomores. And really, after that, we really only have one junior, Wyatt Baumgartner. He's come a long ways. From the first time he stepped on the mat, I think we can safely say that he's 100% better.
Absolutely. I think he's one of those kind of guys that he doesn't say a lot, and when I've been around him, he's a yes sir kind of guy. But he's a team player. He puts the effort in. He's wrestling anybody he can get his hands on. Once I had to break him and his sister from wrestling each other, I was like, that's just not going to work. I just know that he's not afraid to wrestle people, and I think that when, like Scott said, from the beginning of his first year to where he's at now, I saw him wrestle just a week ago up in the Canuck, and I never seen him move so fast. And I know that he had some time off, so it was really nice to see him back in on our mat doing what he does. And I know that Mike had him even in middle school, so he's already a junior, but one of those kind of kids that you keep an eye on.
Yeah, and you're absolutely, he's come a long way. Yeah. I mean, we should dig some film out on Wyatt, some of his matches, and you can see the improvement. The other thing that really makes Wyatt good is he's making other people around him a lot better too. Mm-hmm. In the wrestling room, I really appreciate that he'll take some of these younger guys and he'll take the time and show them and work with them, and he's not using it as a way to take a break or to, go easy on someone. He's legitimately trying to help the team out, and stuff like that kind of flies under the radar sometimes. But I want Wyatt to know that I see it and I appreciate it, and I know the kids that he wrestles with appreciate it. Yep. And not only that, it's paying off for him.
Yeah, it is. It is. Absolutely.
And Bismarck High is going to put 5 seniors on the mat, and they're going to have 6 juniors that are going to be representing as alternates, or shall we say state participants. And it's a loaded lineup. It's a terrific lineup. It's one that I think a lot of people are quite proud of, but they've developed. They've put in their time, they put in that effort, and it's made such a big difference. When we look at that younger group of kids, the one thing that's going to kick in for them too is that maturation muscle. When we talk about kids that, shall we just say that they were, as 7th and 8th graders, they were good wrestlers, but they weren't great. But when that maturation kicks in, boom, all of a sudden they may just explode. And they come on the scene and they're just dominant. And people will say, where did this guy come from? My goodness. Well, that's why you put in that time. That's why you put in that effort. That's why some of the toughest wrestling you're going to face is in that wrestling room each and every night, representing for Bismarck as a wrestler and learning that you got to pay your dues to make work on through that process.
Absolutely.
It's never a bad thing to get your butt kicked a few times in the wrestling room. And if you want to get your butt kicked, the Bismarck High Wrestling Room is probably a good place to go. And for our young guys, I mean, where else can they go and wrestle a D1 recruit for practice? Where else can they go and take on a state champion, or maybe have 2 state champs in your 3-man group? And so going in, not being afraid to step up to that challenge, not being afraid to get put in an uncomfortable position, maybe get beat up, maybe get dominated for an entire practice, but that is really how you get better.
Yeah, and then those same guys will turn around after the practice is over and say, hey, I want to work on something with you, or just work out together with you, because that's the kind of guy they are. They'll grab them and they'll do those kind of things, and you just stand around after practice sometimes and you realize you got to get going home, but you just watch these kids try to do things that are just a little bit extra, because we always say that in practice, that everybody goes to practice at 3:30. So they're putting that extra work in. So when you see the number of kids that didn't have to be here this week that are here, it's pretty impressive. You realize that this is a little kind of a lifestyle you have to live, and that's a good thing. These kids learn a whole lot, not just a little bit of what it's like later in life, about what wrestling can do for you, and you can let it take something from you, or you can go get it from it. And I think that's really impressive that we have a pile of freshmen and a few sophomores and a pile of junior high kids that made the choice to come up this year, and I think we just, like we've said before, reload. And when you have that kind of feeling, it makes it feel good to stay here till it's dark and get up in the morning when it's dark to do those kind of things. And we have those people dedicated to teach kids those kind of things is a real positive thing in this world right now.
And that's the development of what we would call that pride factor. When you go into the wrestling room and you see all those names on the wall, you see all the team efforts that are brought forth, that pride comes back again and again. And it's very easy to acknowledge the people that have put in their dues.
Absolutely.
As this year's new broadcaster, I just want to thank you, coaches, for the effort that you put in. I can only tell and convey to parents, next time you see a coach is putting in those hours with that child, whether it's a young female wrestler or a guy that's paying his dues, and that's your son, I'll tell you what, slap that coach on the back and tell him, hey, thanks, coach. Really appreciate what you're doing for my kid. And with that, we're going to leave the broadcast, and we're going to tell you that next time up, we'll have our state participants. So stay tuned, and we'll break away and come back at you. For Bismarck High Wrestling, hey, thanks for listening.